top of the discussion for the best two players of all time. And Kobe is not the best player of his own era. Like, forget what he is compared to Kareem or Magic or LeBron. Like, Kobe versus Duncan is the debate, not Kobe versus everyone in league history other than Jordan. It's foolishness. It's foolishness.
Let me try to explain Kevin Durant, what he was talking about. When Kevin Durant, because he's basically talking about offensively, all right? So the centers, people like Shaq, Kareem, Olajuwon, all those guys, they're not even in his mind space as far as him talking about, because he's also talking about players he would try to duplicate. KD is an offensive player. He's always been an offensive player. So you know Jordan is his #1. Now, Kobe, for those who grew up watching Jordan, Kobe is a Jordan knockoff offensively. So watch his moves, watch his mannerisms, watch his uniform, watch his style. So KD in his mind, with Kobe being a mini Jordan in his mind space. So he's talking about offensive. So that's my interpretation for KD as a person who grew up watching Jordan, loving Jordan, and having a deep appreciation for who Kobe Bryant is. That's KD. For the KD fans out there, that's for you guys. Absolutely.
English to English. Moving on to the college football playoff, Oklahoma facing off against #1 Alabama. Lincoln Riley says he's preparing for both quarterbacks, Tua Tagovailoa and Jalen Hurts. CeCe, how challenging is it to have to prepare for not just two quarterbacks, but both of these specific guys?
It's challenging if you're Notre Dame. It's challenging. Notre Dame was playing. Notre Dame don't have the athletes to be able to simulate in practice Jalen Hurts. So Oklahoma, they got plenty of athletes on their roster. They'll be able to assimilate what Jalen does. They got plenty of time to be able to watch the film. And Lincoln Riley, man, he saw Tua at all those award ceremonies when he's been traveling around with Kyler. So he knows he's hurt. So he knows he's going to at least face both of these quarterbacks. He knows that.
So let me ask you this real quick, because we were talking about this earlier. If let's say Tua plays one series and is out of the game, he gets hurt again. If Jalen Hurts has to play this football game, you still don't give Oklahoma much of a shot?
They got zero chance. They're going to knock them off the ball. Alabama is too fierce in the trenches. And Oklahoma's not going to be able to block their front four. They're going to be able to run that offense.
Even without Tua, Alabama
500 yards. How you want your meat cut? You want it sliced up, diced, passing it? Or you want me to grind it up like a meat grinder?
Wow.
How you want it?
Wow.
How you want your meat? That's what the way this semifinal going to be.
Awesome.
Bap.
On the tape.
Bap. Finally, the Texans had their 9-game
I'm sure you'll hear it on the radio near
win streak snapped by the Colts on Sunday.
I only steal your takes I agree with.
But the star wideout, DeAndre Hopkins, is still on pace for another great season. A big reason why? A full year of Deshaun Watson throwing him passes. Wasn't always the case, as former teammate of Hopkins, Andre Johnson, noted, saying some guys are fortunate to play with Hall of Fame caliber quarterbacks their whole career. Some guys aren't. CeCe, how much harder is a wide receiver's job with a subpar quarterback?
I mean, this whole game offensively in the NFL is surrounded by that guy. All the attention is on that guy who the quarterback's going to be. And it's just like, it's like no other job that centers around talented people. But in the NFL, man, if you don't have a talented quarterback, it's almost impossible to win. And if you don't have a talented quarterback throwing to you, it's almost impossible to have a great career. So if you don't have a talented quarterback, you don't have a guy that has the ability to be able to read, be able to anticipate, what you have to do is you have to be the constant force in the passing game. That means you have to be an excellent route runner. You can't be a guy who freelances. So you have to be predictable in your movement. He has to be able to anticipate exactly what you're going to do. But ultimately, if you have a guy who's challenged as a quarterback, not only does your skill level route running, your ability to read coverages, man, you got to make some spectacular catches. Game after game after game, because they're not going to be on target. You're not going to be in sync with them. You're not going to. As Warren Moon used to tell me, Chris, on certain routes, Chris, I need this amount of space, bruh. If you give me this amount of space, especially inside, those inside breaking routes, if you play in the slot, and man, it's hard to play in the slot with, man, a guy who can't throw, a guy can't time it up. Man, it makes your your job more difficult. So as a wide receiver, I don't believe in making excuses. You have to be the constant force. You have to be the professional. You have to bring the excellence to the passing game. You have to be predictable because you're not going to have that from your quarterback.
You mentioned all the things you're going to have to make as far as spectacular catches. You're going to have to, you're going to have to get even more open because they can't fit it into the small windows. The other part that Andre didn't talk about, but I know to be the case, is you're also at risk a lot more. If you're playing with a bad quarterback, the risk of him leading you into trouble, right? The risk of him not speaking to you with the football like you talk about, of him laying you out over the middle to where you're trying to make a spectacular catch and you get crushed, is so much greater than when you're playing with one of these good to great quarterbacks that can speak to you.
Now, that's never an excuse. That's all a part of doing business. Running backs play with an inapt offensive line. So you have, if you're involved in team sports, there's going to be some major compromise in the things that I've decided to do. I'm going to do what the team needs me to do. So you being brought into traffic, that's a job. That's part of your job and part of being good in this league. I tell people the difference between the good receivers and the great ones will go across that middle and make the money. The good ones stay on the perimeter, and that's the only part that they like to strive and be excellent at.
So just for some context, the quarterbacks that threw to Andre Johnson in his career: Schaub, Carr, Rosenfels, Keenum, Fitzpatrick, Yates, Banks, Mallett, Ragone, Delhomme, Savage, Leinart, Grossman. And that is the exact track, by the way, that Nuke was on for as well. Before Deshaun Watson, Osweiler, Hoyer, Schaub, Keenum, Savage, Fitzpatrick, Mallett, Yates, Whedon, Daniels, Heineke.
Got the list.
And then they got Deshaun. And that is what was been, to me, so impressive about DeAndre Hopkins, because I was in Houston when they drafted him. I watched him play with those mediocre to bad long list of quarterbacks, is he was productive no matter who was throwing him the football. It wasn't just his spectacular catches. He was able to put up good numbers.
Right. The best guys that ever played this game have been consistent regardless if they have a quarterback. Now, if you have a great one or two great ones, it does make your job easier, but it's all a part. Man, you can't control where you're drafted. You can't control which team you're going to go to. You can't control if your franchise is going to get you a franchise quarterback.
But also, it takes time to get into some sort of chemistry, into a relationship with a quarterback, and for you to go through all those different quarterbacks, and for DeAndre Hopkins still to be able to put up those numbers despite having to start over and over again with all different quarterbacks is so impressive.
I want to ask you one question before we move on, because you had, I'm not to disparage quarterbacks you played with. There's only one great quarterback you ever played with, Warren Moon, first ballot Hall of Famer. Was it after playing with Warren Moon, was it more difficult to go back to what you had played with pre-Warren Moon?
Bad quarterbacks are difficult to play with if you had great experience or you had no experience at all. More of that workload is put on to you. So I wouldn't say my job became harder. I knew more football after Warren Moon, so it allowed me to be able to deal with that. Was a part of what team I was on and part of the overall makeup. So it's not something that I ever like to discuss too much and use as some type of excuse. I mean, 8 Pro Bowl with 5 different quarterbacks. So I believe it's about getting the job done. Regardless of who they have there, you can get the job done. Larry Fitzgerald, it's got 1,200 catches. I don't hear him mention it at not one time. It's never been an excuse for him. It's never been an excuse for the other receivers that have played this great game for as long as they've played it.
It's like if he goes and does another show, he's going to know. No, I'm bringing us both into it. It's just going to be different. It's going to be going from
you guys are a lot different than when I did the show with Bob Costas. A lot different.
It's just the wrong day for
that. No, it's the right
we're 326 shows in. One day you'll get the feel.
Yeah, Nick's a lot like Dan Marino.
Hold on a second.
Said nobody else.
Chris Collinsworth.
Time now for our newest segment. Here we go.
This was your idea.
Makes a list. Here's the deal. Nick loves lists. CC isn't so sure, but he plays along. All right, Nick, what do you have for us today?
Since we were talking about Dwayne Wade yesterday, and I said he's the 4th greatest shooting guard ever, and people were all in my mention, Allen Iverson, league MVP, a guy who led a bad team to the only win that any team got against the 2001 Lakers in the playoffs, and a 4-time scoring champ. Number 6, the forgotten and underrated Iceman George Gervin. See, I knew you grew up watching him. 4-time scoring champ, 7-time All-NBA over a 5-year span. man averaged 30 points per game.
I saw George Gervin lately, man. He looked like he ate Allen Iverson. I'm putting Allen Iverson above George Gervin. But go ahead, man, he's big.
Number 5, James is arguably the best isolation scorer we've ever seen in the league. He needs more playoff success, but what he's done already puts him at number 5. Number 4, D. Wade, as I said yesterday, Finals MVP. When they won that first title, down 0-2 against the Mavs, 39-8-4 in those 4 straight wins, 8-time All-NBA and a 3-time champion. Now the real cream of the crop. 3 guys who are top 10 all time. Jerry West, number 3. 9 NBA Finals, 10-time first-team All-NBA, a Finals MVP and average for his career, 27-6. You see, your guy Kobe Bryant, 2 Finals MVPs, 5 championships, 1 league MVP, 15 times on an All-NBA team, first, second, or 3rd team. And then Michael Jordan, 6-time champ and 6-time Finals MVP, 10 All-NBA first teams, 5 regular season MVPs, and without question, the 2nd greatest player of all time.
But what about the defense? What about Michael Jordan? How many times was he first?
He was Defensive Player of the Year once.
Okay.
First team All Defense, I want to say 7 times.
Yeah, don't forget that part.
Okay, well, try to be quicker. Try to be quicker.
But John Starks
If you want to be quicker, you could have admitted the LeBron stuff.
What? I never said LeBron. When did I say anything about LeBron in this whole segment? Not once. Not one time.
Just it's too timely.
6 championships.
Got to take a break. Coming up, back to football, to the Steelers.
Did they ever get the game
getting
7?
back on track.
Yeah,
First things first.
Not
After
in the
this.
finals, in the Eastern Conference.
Did they ever get to the finals to game 7?
No.
Oh, okay.
Game 6.
Michael Jeffrey Jordan.
My name is Amy Belafonte. I didn't used to believe in monsters.